Hello again. This video focuses on the strategies that have worked to create our food forest. I'm April. Together with my partner Paul Kelly and our sons Lloyd and Ryan, we began in 1993. Our food forest is a big part of our permaculture design. The food forest converts a lot of our waste. We consume less because it supplies food, as well as most of our heating and cooling needs, and it gives us a chance to produce more. The 5 main functions of the food forest are carbon capture and waste conversion, food and medicine, heating and cooling, and exercise and outdoor living. Before we get into the strategies and show you how we achieved this, I want to take you through some background on the site. Here's a quick SWOT analysis of the site. As the site has become more mature, the strengths have increased. We've learnt to manage the weaknesses, and the opportunities are becoming more diverse, but the threats of climate change and firestorm and housing density pressures will keep increasing. But it's good to be realistic about what we can actually achieve in terms of diversity on one small site. So we're not exactly a suburban block because we have half a hectare, so just over an acre and a half, and a verge which is actually very long, 90 metres, and then there's a creek area at the back which is full of woody weeds like coral trees and privet. Our site is regarded as a dry rainforest, and the soil is solid, hard clay, good for making pots. So there's been a lot of remediation needed to be done, whilst maintaining the little bit of wildlife that was on the site. A quick note about forest and fertility. In temperate regions, the soils are fertile, generally speaking. Places like England have really deep, beautiful soil. Whereas in the tropics, the fertility lies in the forest, the trees themselves, and the leaf litter. In many areas of Australia, the soil tends to be extremely thin, and the native vegetation is adapted to that. Since European settlement and the introduction of hard-hooved animals like cattle and horses, the soil was compacted and in many places irreversibly damaged. Our soil had heavy clay and very little fertility. We know that our site had horses and dairy cows grazing on it. We can feel the compacted soil in the areas that have not had raised gardens, because we've done no-dig gardens everywhere. In those areas where there are gardens, the soil is softer. This has taken decades to create, and now in some places the soil is darker, moister, and more fertile. As I'm digging here, you can see the dark mulch layer on top of a heavy clay. And by the way, I'm using an old roasting pan as a wicking basin for the new planting of a tamarillo. This is the area that we live in, called Mount Kembla Village. You can see to our west that there's still a lot of bushland. So this is zooming in to our site. You can hardly see anything because there's so many trees. So we have a slope going to the southwest, and that's a poor aspect. It's not a great aspect. It's the opposite to what you want. Now let's get on to the strategies that we've found useful on Silk Farm. Here's a sector analysis. Cold winds come up from the south. The fire threat will come from above, either in a pyrocumulus, which is a firestorm, or with embers. Now we have seen ash falling on the site. There are wildlife all around the creek area, and sometimes the wildlife like deer, farmers' cows, other people's dogs, feral cats and so forth, they do come along the street. But you can see there's a mountain on our south, and that protects us from really harsh cold wind. I like to use sun traps as much as possible on this site because we are so sun challenged. One of the first things we did was invest in a solar hot water system, and that system has been running now for over 28 years. On the right hand side you can see some evacuated tubes that feed into another hot water system. It's actually more efficient, and that heats some hot water radiators in the house, and it just takes the chill off the air. One of the things that has worked really well for us is the zoning. Inside the house there's ferments, there's seed raising, cooking of the food, repairing clothes. Lots of things happen inside the house that reduce our consumption and make us more productive. Then it spills out into zone 1 and so forth. And now you can see the zoning goes down the hill for us. In our zone 0, we've got our fuel stove for cooking in winter and keeping the house warm. And that has been really wonderful investment. Here is our main cooking area in winter. We use the ash in the garden, and we use it in the compost toilet in the shed outside. There's a lot of handy little things that we've learnt in managing fire. Now let me show you our zone 1 area. This is where we would have the seedlings and the tiny little intensive care area for plants. And we also like to do some outdoor cooking, and this is where we have parties. It's lovely and warm because it's a sun trap. There's also grey water from our laundry and our hand basins. The outdoor cooking includes solar oven and pizza oven and a rocket stove. All of that cooking outdoors generally needs a bit of supervision, so it's handy to be able to keep your outdoor cooking quite close to the house. Well, what I love about the solar oven, it doesn't need water, but other cooking usually needs a little bit of water to be added from time to time. I think it's really important to have playful spaces in the design. Here's an artwork I did. It's a spoof on a famous painting called The Swing. Our zone 2 has got poultry houses, compost toilets, outdoor workspaces. The wicking pots are absolutely valuable for when we need to go away. A little greenhouse, which is not very efficient because it constantly needs attention, or the plants will die. And then we've got a nursery. To be honest, I've put everything that's in the nursery into wicking pots. Our zone 3 is mostly now bamboo, bananas and geese. Now you might not think of bamboo and bananas as a grass, but they are pretty much. And the geese used to eat all the kikuyu. When we first came here, it took 6 hours to mow the kikuyu. Now we have no kikuyu left, but we still have the geese. So the geese now eat bamboo leaves and banana leaves. We can grow a lot more foods beyond the supermarket varieties. So our zone 4 is primarily fuel for the stove and for constructing things, although I do prefer the bamboo to construct things. And we also have a bog at the bottom of the garden. Bogs are very handy sources of in-soil water. The wildlife is lovely. So nice to hear all the different birds. We've got a lot of water dragons, echidnas, swamp wallabies, all of that in the middle of a busy suburban village. For me, zone 6 is the area outside our site, beyond our control, but just as important. It starts at the verge, the edge between our site and our community, people and wildlife. When we've got some waste, we have to decide who can get it. So if the waste contains seeds, then we turn it back into plants. If the waste is suitable for the chickens, they get first digs. After the chickens, the geese get it. After that, the worm farm gets it. And after that, it gets buried and becomes soil. Judith Collins, one of my mentors, says, if something doesn't have at least 3 functions, don't have it. This cob wall has at least 3 functions. The first function is to be a sign or a giant letterbox at the front of the property. It's an artwork, it's a thermal mass to the garden behind, and it definitely reduces the noise from the street to the front bedroom and provides some privacy. But I guess above all, it taught me how to stop using cement or concrete and start using earth for my structures. Bill Mollison said, "It doesn't matter how many things you put in a design. What matters is how they connect. What sort of functional connections can we create in the design?" Here the children play and they would eat. One of my favourite strategies was to use small and slow solutions. One of the slow and small solutions was to breed chickens that would eat our worst weeds and be small enough to not cause too much damage to the garden and not be too noisy when they crow. I've been inspired, not just learning from nature, but being inspired by nature to understand the nutrient cycles, but also to understand the functions of the different patterns. So in summary, the key strategies are the sector planning, zoning, a hierarchy of the waste use, multiple functions for each component, functional connections between the components, creativity and experimentation, small and slow solutions, and a willingness to watch and learn from nature. None of these strategies are set in stone. I hope I continue to be inspired by nature and I keep finding new opportunities.